A tariff is a tax on imports, goods brought into our country from abroad. Imagine a toy car made in China. When it arrives in the US, the government can add a tariff, making it more expensive. The importer pays the tax, but that cost usually gets passed on to you, the buyer. Tariffs make foreign goods pricier, helping US companies compete. For example, a tariff on Chinese toy cars could make Ohio-made toys more attractive. But American families pay more for imports, which can strain budgets. Other countries often retaliate, leading to trade wars. So, while tariffs might help some industries, they can hurt others. Tariffs are a powerful, controversial tool in America's economic playbook. The consequences of these policies reach far beyond the checkout line. The next chapter, a court ruling that could change everything. Let's dive in. Recently, a federal appeals court made a landmark decision on Trump's tariffs. On August 29, 2025, the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Federal Circuit ruled that most of Trump's tariffs were illegal. The court said the president overstepped his authority. Setting tariffs is Congress's job, not the president's alone. The Constitution gives Congress the power to regulate trade with foreign nations. The judges ruled that if Congress wants to let the president set tariffs, it must do so clearly and specifically. The law Trump used wasn't clear enough to justify such sweeping action. The court invoked the major questions doctrine. Big national decisions require clear direction from Congress, not vague old laws. Imposing tariffs on nearly all imports was too big a move for the president to make alone. For now, the tariffs remain in place while the Trump administration appeals to the Supreme Court. If the ruling stands, it could end these tariffs and force the government to pay back billions to companies that paid them. More importantly, it would set a precedent future presidents would find it much harder to start trade wars on their own. This decision is about more than tariffs. It's about who holds the power in America's government. The court's message: Congress, not the president, controls the nation's economic levers. The legal battle isn't over, but the stakes are enormous for trade, the economy, and the balance of power in Washington. The outcome could reshape how America does business with the world for years to come. The next question: how did Trump sidestep Congress in the first place? Let's look at the law he used and why the courts pushed back. The story of tariffs is now a story of constitutional limits, and the next chapter is just beginning. How did Trump impose tariffs without Congress? He used the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, or IEEPA. Passed in 1977, IEEPA gives the president special powers during a national emergency. Trump declared an economic emergency, claiming it threatened national security. This allowed him to bypass Congress and act quickly. But IEEPA was meant for targeted sanctions, not sweeping trade policy. Trump's use of the law was unprecedented. He set broad tariffs on many countries, including allies. Tariffs ranged from 10% to 50%, even targeting Canada, Mexico, and the EU. Legal experts warned he was stretching the law far beyond its intent. The appeals court agreed. IEEPA doesn't let the president impose unlimited tariffs. The founders wanted Congress to control taxes and trade, not the president alone. By using IEEPA this way, Trump triggered a constitutional clash over who sets economic policy. The courts pushed back, setting the stage for a major showdown. The next scene: what economists think about this strategy. Economists were skeptical of Trump's tariff strategy from the start. The U.S. economy was stable before the tariffs. There was no real emergency. Trump bypassed Congress, creating legal and political risks. He could have worked with lawmakers to address trade issues, especially with China. Instead, he acted alone, causing uncertainty for businesses and sparking legal challenges. The economic logic was flawed. Tariffs are paid by American importers, not foreign countries. Those costs are passed to consumers, raising prices for American families. Retaliation was predictable. China hit back, hurting U.S. farmers and exporters. The result: a self-inflicted wound that disrupted supply chains, raised prices, and slowed growth. The legal gamble backfired, and the economic pain was widespread. The policy alienated allies and made it harder to build coalitions against unfair trade practices. In the end, the tariffs created more problems than they solved. Economists call it a series of unforced errors, avoidable, costly, and damaging to America's economy. The next perspective: Trump's own defense of his policy. Let's hear his side. Trump and his team see tariffs as a success, not a disaster. They argue tariffs fix unfair trade, protect American jobs, and bring in billions in revenue. Trump claims other countries have taken advantage of the U.S. for decades. After the court ruling, he doubled down, promising to appeal and insisting tariffs are still in effect. The administration touts $142 billion in tariff revenue as proof the policy works. They say this money strengthens America and gives leverage in negotiations. Officials argue tariffs are vital for national security and economic strength. For Trump, legal and economic critics are just naysayers who don't understand his vision. The message tariffs are making America stronger, and the fight isn't over. But what did these tariffs actually do to the economy? Let's look at the real-world impact. Tariffs had immediate real effects on the U.S. economy. Prices for goods like steel, cars, and appliances rose as companies passed on higher costs to consumers. Supply chains were disrupted. Businesses scrambled to adapt to new taxes on imported parts. Some companies absorbed costs, others moved production, but uncertainty soared. American exporters suffered as China and others retaliated, slapping tariffs on U.S. goods. Farmers lost key markets, especially in China, and needed billions in government aid to survive. Tariffs also strained relationships with allies like Canada, Mexico, and the EU. Long-standing trade partners felt targeted, making cooperation on other issues harder. Instead of uniting against unfair practices, the U.S. found itself fighting with friends. The result? Higher prices, disrupted industries, and weakened alliances. The economic pain was widespread, touching everything from groceries to global diplomacy. Tariffs were more than a tax, they were a shock to the system. The next question, what does the data say about the economic slowdown? Let's look at the numbers. The story of tariffs is written in the data, and the numbers tell a sobering tale. Here's what happened. The numbers show a clear economic slowdown after the tariffs. At the end of 2024, the U.S. economy was growing at 2.4% a year. After the tariffs hit, growth turned negative. GDP shrank by up to 0.5% in early 2025. Economists say tariffs were a major factor, creating uncertainty and discouraging investment. Businesses paused hiring and expansion, waiting to see what would happen. Tariff revenue hit $142 billion, but most of that was paid by American companies and consumers. U.S. exports to China and other retaliating countries plummeted, especially in agriculture. Global trade slowed, and the hoped-for reduction in the trade deficit didn't materialize. Studies from the Fed and others found the costs outweighed the benefits: higher prices, lost jobs, and slower growth. Protected industries gained a little, but losses elsewhere were greater. The data is clear. Tariffs acted as a drag on the economy, not a boost. The debate continues, but the numbers speak volumes. Now let's weigh the arguments on both sides. Supporters say tariffs are tough medicine, painful now, but good for America in the long run. They argue drastic action was needed to confront unfair trade, especially with China. Tariffs, they say, forced other countries to the table and brought in billions for the U.S. The administration sees short-term pain as a price worth paying for long-term strength. But most economists disagree. They argue tariffs are paid by Americans, not foreign countries, and trade wars hurt everyone. Retaliation, higher costs, and uncertainty outweighed any gains. Experts say there were better ways to address China's practices, like working with allies. Instead, the U.S. isolated itself and made the problem worse. The real issue, the solution, caused more harm than the problem itself. The debate isn't just about economics, it's about America's place in the world. The next chapter, what does the future hold for American trade? Let's look ahead. The fight over tariffs is about more than economics. It's about America's future and who holds power. The court ruling pushes back against presidential overreach, reaffirming Congress's role in trade. If upheld, it will make it harder for presidents to act alone on economic policy. Trump's tariffs forced a national debate about trade, jobs, and globalization. The challenge now, finding a balance between global trade benefits and protecting American workers. The scars from the trade war, lost markets, strained alliances, shaken confidence, will linger. America must decide, protectionism or partnership. The outcome will shape the economy and America's identity for years to come. The legal and economic battles aren't over. The lessons of this chapter will echo in every future trade debate. The story of tariffs is still being written,